So it is about midnight, and I just finished Longest Day. And oh boy, this one. Let me start off by saying that all the Eighth Doctor adventures so far, I have found something redeemable in each and every one of them. That's not to say there isn't something redeemable, there aren't redeemable qualities about this, but I've found something redeemable enough for me to like the books in their own special, unique ways. Books 1 through 8, I I like each of them. So it is a bit of a displeasure to say that I have hit my first snag in the road of reading Doctor Who novels, and it is the ninth book in the Eighth Doctor Adventure series, Longest Day, that has the unfortunate place in my heart as the first bad Doctor Who novel that I've read. So there are a few things to talk about, and I do want to start off with some redeeming qualities, because there is one. The premise this book has a lot of good ideas that would make good stories on their own. They're a bunch of different story elements blended together that shouldn't need to go together. So there's one element about these aliens called the Cusks. They're a bit of a tragic case. They their home planet was invaded, and now on the brink of extinction, they are seeking out a way to develop time travel to go back and avert the wars that wiped them out, and also take revenge on the universe. So, again, a bit of a tragic case, and actually it's a pretty unique one as far as Doctor Who's backstories go, because a lot of Doctor Who backstories, let's all say it now, a lot of the villains lack depth, and this one actually has some development for it that gives them reason to be genocidal maniacs. The only problem is it isn't executed well, and what's his name? Because it's a pseudonym here. I can't remember what is exact. Stephen Cole. Stephen Cole wrote this. Um, yeah. Stephen Cole. This is his first ever book, I believe, and at this point in his career, he just doesn't have the prose to back up that idea. And that is something that goes for all the other ideas introduced throughout this book. There's another really cool idea of this planet. It's called Hirath or Hirith, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's basically a planet that's split up into a bunch of different time zones. How it's described in the beginning is time moves slower on, let's say, one chunk of land than it does on another. It's not like an Earth time zone where someone's 5 hours ahead of us. It is literally the passage of time is faster or slower depending on where you are on the planet. He doesn't go through with the idea. I mean, there are hints of it in there. It becomes a bit more prominent towards the end, but other than that, he doesn't really explore the idea very much. And again, it's an interesting idea, it's an interesting concept that would make a good story on its own, but sadly falls flat here. And of course, you've got the stereotypical Doctor Who, and this is the most pointless part of the book, too. It's basically the Doctor and Sam get separated early on, and Sam ends up on Hirith, and so does the Doctor, but they end up in different time zones. And Sam ends up in this time zone with this crash-landed rebel group, I guess. and the rebel group, it's really underdeveloped, and this isn't a good idea from the book. The rebel group is rebelling against a stereotypical tyrannical regime, I guess, and that's about it. There isn't really any further development about that. I it doesn't really tie back into the plot. Like, the leader of the rebels turns out to be a dick and crashes his spaceship into a moon base, which is where the Doctor and Sam arrive on. They arrive on a moon base above Hireth and are subsequently teleported down when the Cusks invade the moon base. And they invade the moon base because Hireth is actually an experiment for their time travel stuff. So that bit of it all comes together, but the rebels just crash into the base at the end of the book, and there isn't really any payoff for any of the characters that were developed alongside Sam. They didn't have very much development to begin with, but, would have been nice to have some sort of payoff. Literally, I'm not kidding. This actually happens. Two of them disappear in front of Sam's eyes. They don't just disappear partway through the novel. It's part of the plot that they disappear. And there's just no explanation for it other than, oh yeah, time stuff. They didn't use... because there's this whole thing with a callback to another book where there's time trees. It's from Genocide, and they pull a couple berries or two, but they only get sent back a few minutes, and then so yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And like I said, it all does come together in the end, but it doesn't. What I'm it's a weird book. It's weird, and I don't like it. It's not, well, it is hard to follow because, and I'm apparently not the only one who has had this issue. Jacob, who is my go-to novel guy because he is a crack whore when it comes to the novels, had the exact same issues with the book that I had. It's just mind-boggling, and like, I have to be a bit more harsh where Jacob wasn't. And I've got to say, like, the character stuff with Sam is really disappointing to me. Like, there's no emotional payoff from any of the other stuff that has happened over the course of the past two books, Cursal and Option Lock, which there should be, because in the last book, her crush, I think they kissed once towards the end. Her man love died, and in Cursal, her mind gets fucked and invaded by a werewolf, and it's just, all of her friends that she makes in Cursal die too, and it's just like, there's none of that present here. There's none of it. None of the emotional weight that you'd expect, especially from the end of the last book. Option Lock ends on what I thought was a cliffhanger, because the Doctor just drags Sam into the TARDIS, and they're never seen for the rest of the book. That's it. That's the Doctor and Sam done. Like, as what's his name? It's not... I can't remember his name. Maybe it's Sergeant Pickering, I want to say? Sergeant Pickering is her man love from the last book, and he dies in the most brutal way possible in front of her eyes. The Doctor drags her in the TARDIS, and that's it. That is cliffhanger material, and this book doesn't follow up on it. So that's an issue in itself, is that no emotional weight is here whatsoever. Sam is really annoying in this book. I could not stand her. Like, it's like we took everything about how she was in the last book and like tried to do it again, but changed a tiny bit, but it was just enough to make her unbearable. It's mind-boggling. And this is not a dig on Stephen Cole whatsoever, because I've heard some of his audio work, and I know that the book sitting on my shelf, Shadow in the Glass, it's a Sixth Doctor novel. I've read really good reviews of that stuff. I've read really good reviews of his work. But sadly, this first one, it's a dud. Like I said, there are a lot of interesting concepts here that I like. I like the idea of a temporally fucked planet. I like the idea of a genocidal race out for revenge on the universe that actually has a backstory. That is really cool, because that is something we don't normally get in Doctor Who. Like, even the Daleks, motivation-wise, kind of flimsy. Here you can understand it, but what it's lacking here is execution and the prose to back up those ideas. It's just, it's hard to pay attention to. Like, when I was reading, I often found myself drifting. Like, I'd be looking at the words, I'd be subconsciously reading them, I but it wouldn't register. That's what it was. It was just, it was a eh. That's all I can say, really. It's not a good book. It's not, and it really pains me to say that, because, despite everybody else's issues with the Eighth Doctor adventures, I've really enjoyed everything so far up to this point. I really have. And this is not good. This is a low point. This is definitely the lowest point I have hit so far. To be fair, it is not the worst Doctor Who story I've experienced. Like I said, it has redeemable qualities. There are concepts there that I like. Yeah, if I were to liken this to any other Doctor Who story across any medium, for those who know, the Twilight Kingdom. I'd say this is on the same level as the Twilight Kingdom, except it's worse in just a way, because it's a book and you therefore invest more time in it. And skip it. If you're reading these books, skip Longest Day, because the title doesn't lie. When you read this, it really does feel like a long-ass day.